Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to call to order tonight's Planning Commission meeting. It is Monday, January 5th, 2026, at 5:36 p.m. This is a continuance of a public hearing for file number 2025-15, the Line 29 Architecture Marriott Hotel Site Plan Review. Dustin, before we get started, you have some comments?
Yeah, just before we get into the hearing portion, I have just a point of business. I'm looking for a quick confirmation for a quorum next month. We will have other business coming up through this body. So your next meeting that I expect will be actually a Tuesday, the 17th, given the holiday. So February 17th. I'm looking to see if I have 4 of you here.
So there's, after this, there's not another meeting on the 17th of February.
Correct.
That's it, nothing till that.
Well, I'm looking for something on that day, but I don't have anything planned prior to it. So I'm just wondering I got at least one of you.
I'm available.
I don't think so.
Okay, 2, and anyone else on via your life plan out that far?
No. I think probably.
You can phone in. Okay. Available phone, February 17th.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got a phone?
Zoom works. Perfect. I'm gonna book something for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Okay, before we begin the rest of this evening's proceedings, we shall call for any new disclosures from the commission members that would be ex parte contacts, conflicts of interests, and bias since our last meeting in December. Nothing? No one? Okay.
No such conflicts.
Okay.
Nothing new.
Nothing new.
Okay, nothing for myself either. The next step here is there anyone in the audience that wishes to question any commissioner about their disclosures? If so, please make yourself known and step up to oh, there you go. Yes.
Good evening, planning commissioners. We wish to be heard on a bias challenge for one of the commissioners. This is never fun to do, but we do think it is important. Again, my name is Ezra Hammer. I'm here on behalf of the project applicant. And following our last meeting in December, we were alerted by a concerned member of the public that one of the planning commissioners had made bias statements on a Facebook group about the project, and importantly about one of the city rules which the project is utilizing as part of its approval process tonight. And we found those comments to be challenging to the point where we do believe it shows bias, and we would ask that commissioner recuse themselves. So with that, I would like to read the comment, if that is appropriate, Chair, and then ask the commissioner if they would like to comment or recuse themselves from the hearing.
Who is it?
It is Commissioner Kitts.
Okay. Go ahead.
So we have handouts that we'll provide the other commissioners with. Scott, if you'd be kind enough. This was a statement made in the Hood River Happenings Facebook group. Some of you may be members of it. It is a clearinghouse for conversations on happenings in Hood Rivers. And we have a text thread going discussing the project. And in this text thread, which was on August 4th and was not mentioned at your last hearing nor disclosed at that hearing, Mr. Kitts raises concerning comments about the project itself insofar as he is opining on it, despite the fact that the record is not complete. He has not had an opportunity to review all the information about the project. He raises concerns about whether or not a hotel is even justified, which of course is the project presented. And I think more challenging for us, raises very serious doubts in his own mind about whether he believes the city processes and procedures as it relates to in lieu parking fees are warranted. And importantly, this is a city code which all project applicants have the right to utilize and comply with. And our project does, as many other hotel projects have done recently. And here we have Commissioner Kitts expressing his displeasure with the process and insinuating that the community is worse off for the fact that that ordinance is in place. And again, because our project is utilizing that ordinance, we find it very troubling that we would have a commissioner in a public setting opining to the public about the fact that he does not like the ordinance itself and believes that we are in a worse place because of it.
Am I allowed to respond to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, the first sentence kind of says it all. It says I'm on the fence with this project. And I was on the fence with the project, and I'm opining, as you say, over the the loop parking fee is, you know, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, yeah, I was in the hearing I was here in front of the city council when they lowered the loop parking fees. I thought it was a bad idea at the time. I still think it's a bad idea. And if you think that's disqualification for me, and I mean, this was before I even got on the city council. I wasn't even a commissioner at this time. I wasn't even thinking about being a commissioner at this time. So, yeah, that's disqualification. Then someone's gonna have to decide that. I don't believe it is at all.
Actually, it's up to you
Oh,
as a
okay.
commissioner, and that you need to be able to decide whether you can decide this application based on the criteria before you, based on the facts in the record, and that you have not prejudged this, because bias is another way of saying prejudgment. And so, you know, you had explained the statements, but ultimately you have to make a decision that is unbiased, based on a criteria, based on the evidence in the record, yes or no.
I can do that, and I think I can't imagine that no one has an opinion on this, anyone in town. So, including this here on this on the commission, it's impossible not to have. But you have to go beyond your opinion, and you have to look at the facts and the whatever presented to you and judge from that. And I've got some questions about that. So that's going to be some of my first questions. Nothing to do with parking. This has to do with the whole process. So yeah, I can absolutely do that.
Okay, is that, I assume that's the end of this process, right?
I think actually with
The code has a weird provision where it allows the planning commission or the city council, when it comes to them, to decide to kick a member off or not, which is sort of weird in my mind, since under the ethics rules, it's personal to the commissioner. So I think that's still part of the standard script I've seen in past. So you might want to check to see if the planning commission has any particular feelings about this, or just roll on to the next point.
Okay. Do any of the other commissioners have any compelling arguments for why Mike should not stay? Commissioner Kitts should not be a part of this? None? Okay, neither do I. Let us move forth. So at the conclusion of the December 1st hearing, we sent the applicant away with a long list of issues that we wanted the applicant team to address. And since then, the design proposal for this project has changed significantly. We also discussed at the December 1st hearing that the record would be left open with a somewhat complicated open record sequence. We discussed that we would then reconvene on January 5th to receive final verbal comments from the applicant, deliberate and decide the application. We have now today, shortly before this meeting, received dozens of procedural objections to the suggestion that the applicant should get the last word by way of concluding verbal comments this evening. That gives us several procedural options at this point. First, it was discussed at the December 1st hearing that the applicant could and would provide concluding oral comments at our continuance hearing. This is consistent with the with the statutory requirement that the applicant gets the last word because the applicant has the burden of proof and should be allowed to meet that burden, but with no new evidence in those concluding final rebuttal remarks. We could deny the applicant that opportunity and just roll into our deliberation this evening without benefit of the applicant's comments that describe the final form of the design, or we could allow everyone in opposition to first give their final response to the revised hotel design before the applicant gives its final concluding remarks, again with no new evidence. I am inclined personally to, as the chair, to let the applicant provide their final concluding remarks for a few reasons. First, we talked about this at the December 1st hearing, that the applicant would get the opportunity for final oral comments at this continuation hearing, and no one objected back in December. Second, the project proposal has changed significantly in response to opponent testimony and our request for changes, and I think that one would appreciate a description of where that changed design as proposed sits today. I think the planning commission needs and deserves that explanation of like where we are now. Third, the applicant gets the final word in all of these land use matters. So as long as no new evidence is introduced, I am inclined to let the applicant do that. And finally, allowing the applicant final concluding remarks with no new evidence will not prejudice anyone's substantial procedural right. And if anyone disagrees, any procedural error can be corrected at the city council level. The issue, sorry, go ahead. I see Dustin.
I think we have someone with a procedural question online raising their hand.
Oh, we do? Okay.
I think it's Mike Connors who originally raised this procedural objection.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Connors.
Mike, we haven't heard you yet, but we're ready for you if you have something to say.
Mr. Connors, we see your hand. We cannot hear you. Was he going to describe the procedural objection at hand?
This would be the time for that, so
Yeah.
I presume that is Mike's intent, but we need to hear from him personally.
Also, I think Dustin sent out to all of you kind of a packet of all of these procedural objections. They're virtually identical, but the first one that was most specific was from Mike Connors, who's an attorney representing one of the opponents. So I'd like to hear him
Okay, that
explain.
would be great.
Mike.
If we could hear you at some point.
Maybe he's muted.
Yeah, try to promote him, panelist. See if that.
My name is Warren Johnson, and I'm a neighbor up the street. I'd love to hear what they have to say about the modifications, but I think it's a little unusual to have them make a response and then the public doesn't get an opportunity to react to the changes that are being made. But since you're in a position to maybe evaluate what the process might be moving forward, I wanted to consider that.
I think we got,
I can see him.
Yes, we can see you now.
Okay.
No, not yet.
No, he's muted. Maybe he's muted.
no, is not muted. Is not muted, and you have plenty of audio, but no video. Or plenty of video, no audio. I would look for,
Oh, wait, here
there
we're
you
gonna
go.
try the earphones.
There you go.
No?
Nope, still can't hear you. Let's see. I've seen this before. Maybe if they. Maybe he could be calm.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Apologize about that. I think I was trying to change my settings, and I think the problem was not being a panelist wasn't allowing me to be heard or seen. For the record, my name is Mike Connors. I'm the attorney representing Mr. Ryerson, and as Mr. Cairns indicated, we had some email exchanges today about a procedural objection that we have raised with respect to the process tonight. I'll try to be brief in explaining our procedural objections. But first of all, I think it's crystal clear that the applicant does not have the opportunity to address the commission orally tonight. The city code defers to the state statute that applies to this open record process that the planning commission used. The state statute is abundantly clear that the applicant's final argument, they are entitled to the final word, and their final argument must be a written argument, and it must be submitted 7 days after the date in which all parties were permitted to submit rebuttal comments. The rebuttal comments were due on 12/15. That means 7 days thereafter. Final written argument was on December 22nd. So there's nothing, the state statute expressly limits it to a final written argument. There's nothing in the city code that permits it otherwise. And I certainly didn't understand or hear that the planning commission was permitting the applicant to give a summary of its comments at the hearing tonight. And I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never seen a jurisdiction allow that to happen when using the open record process. There's been some questions about whether or not it would be prejudicial. I think it's clearly prejudicial. And I think you start with the question of why would the applicant be asking for an opportunity to summarize and clarify its project in violation of the procedural requirements unless they thought it would have a bearing on your decision. Clearly, they understand it does, which is why they're willing to risk this procedural error and potential procedural defect in the process. And I think the reason that has been stated for allowing them to do that is that there's been some confusion regarding the project modifications and how it addresses community concerns. Well, the applicant had an opportunity to clarify, clearly explain that during their open record procedure, and they didn't. And if they didn't, it doesn't mean that they and they alone are allowed an opportunity to address the commission. Addressing clarification of the project and what modifications were made and how they relate to the issues is inherently evidentiary. Those aren't legal arguments. It's clarification to try to explain what it is that they actually did. And we just feel that it's unnecessary. We've had 2 hearings. We've had an open record process in which the applicant had 2 evidentiary submittals, a final written argument submittal, and there's really no reason to allow the applicant and the applicant alone an opportunity to try and summarize or clarify their proposal. If they were to do so, each and every party that has commented on this application should have an opportunity to respond to those clarifications and summaries. Because up till now, we haven't. I'll just speak from my personal experience. All due respect to the applicant, but I found the project revision descriptions very confusing. It's not clear to me what revisions they made. To allow them to be able to explain what those revisions are to the commission and deprive all the remaining parties an opportunity to comment or respond to those clarifications, I think is a clear procedural violation. I just would advise the commission, if you commit a procedural violation, taint the process, it could create a procedural defect that months, years down the road would come up on appeal and require this to come back before you. Everybody's had an opportunity to comment. We think you should deliberate and make your decision based on the testimony you've heard at the 2 hearings and the extensive written comments that have been submitted by all parties. And we just urge you to follow your procedural requirements. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that is our procedural objection. And I appreciate your patience in allowing me to explain that.
Thank you, Mr. Connors. Does anyone have any questions for Dan? Dan, comments? guidance?
Mike and I have been in practice together for a long, long time, and I'm surprised in 30 years he hasn't seen this. This is a pretty common opportunity. The applicant gets the last word, final rebuttal in written, oftentimes also in oral form. No new evidence, but it's ultimately up to the commission. This was discussed at the December 1st meeting, that the applicant would, after the open record sequence, the applicant would have an opportunity to come back at the continuance hearing and make concluding oral comments. And I think we actually transcribed the hearing from December 1st. Do you have?
Yeah, and so albeit about an hour into the hearing, you see my comments in my staff report. I think verbatim, we made a recommendation to leave the record open for 7 days, to allow arguments and resubmissions within 7 days, and then allow the applicant 7 days for final rebuttal.
Why
And
don't you read what?
from my quote, it says, this then allow the applicant 7 days for final rebuttal. Applicant has the burden of proof in this matter, so they are allowed the last word on it. Continued quote, those 7 days, you would end up with a written rebuttal, and then the applicant would be asked to reappear and have the opportunity to provide final rebuttal to you in person. On January 5th, which I stated at that point, which I believe is the next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting after the holiday break, I'm here for any questions that you may have. Okay. And then we went on to hear from the applicant. Later, actually at the end of the first December 8th open record period, you received information along with everyone else who chose to read it, advertising the series of events, which included a statement in there stating that we would anticipate applicant's rebuttal, hearing from you in person. Then again, on December 15th, after the second round, you received another cover letter outlining the schedule of events, again stating that we anticipated for this to happen. So although there's clearly some difference of opinions, that's where it appeared in the record leading up to this point.
So I do believe that there are some ambiguities in the changes that were made by the applicant in terms of the reduction of the number of floors on 2 or 3 segments, and maybe I was confused in not seeing that match some of the plans or some of the renderings. So that's something that would be worthwhile getting, just understanding the full, complete current application, I think is a gap for me at least. Maybe I'm alone in that, and people through the deliberation can help get me up to speed. I'm open to that too.
So Mr. Connors, is he saying that if we don't do what he suggests, this whole process is basically someone can come back in a year or a month or whatever and challenge?
That's what he said, but that's nonsense. If anyone,
Nonsense.
and there are lots of people who have objected to this happening. This is very likely to go to the city council, and it will be resolved there, where there'll be a full hearing before the city council, and people will have the chance to say what they want to say about the proposal at that level. So it's not going to bubble up all of a sudden years from now as a problem. It gets resolved now. All procedural objections at the local level get resolved at the local level at this stage of the game, at least. So it's
Dan, can I clarify, Dan, is the city council process an open record process, or is it closed record? No new evidence at city council?
Closed on the record.
Yeah.
it's on the record usually with oral argument.
Yeah, so if the applicant is entitled to clarify and explain the ambiguities in their revised project submittal, which I think the commission has indicated they, like I was and other parties, are confused about what the revisions are even in scope, that's evidentiary. You can't cure evidentiary procedural errors in a on-the-record appeal process.
If you raise an evidentiary procedural error to the city council, the record would be open to address that, though.
Why wouldn't we do that here? I mean, why would we wait till the city council to cure an issue that is a defect created at the planning commission?
The one remedy that the chair outlined is to allow everyone who's objected to give their final opinion about the design. They've had that opportunity. The record during the 777 sequence, people had the opportunity to review the plans and continue any objections they have. So that's one opportunity you have tonight. One option is to allow all the people who have objected to give their view with the applicant getting the final, comment. Again, no new evidence in any of this, but my view of this is that since there's no new evidence, and this is a clarification that, from my view as staff, would benefit from knowing a crystallization of what is the proposal at this point in time, since it has changed since it was first submitted. That would be a benefit. And if people believe that clarification based on evidence already in the record is a procedural error, they can raise that to the city council, and the city council can allow them to comment on what changes they think weren't in the record. But I don't see it as a procedural error.
Can I just ask, were there no procedural objection happening, we would still have an opportunity to ask the applicant questions to clarify their additional materials that were provided?
That's always, in all of this, it's a tricky deal because no new evidence is allowed to come in at this level.
Okay,
And so you could, and that happens often where the commission will ask for, like, which drawing shows the final design that's before us tonight. That's a good thing to know.
Mhm.
And you can ask the applicant for those sorts of things based on basically direction within the record.
For the record, I just disagree. For the record, just want to say I disagree with that. I think once the record is closed, the planning commission has to base this decision on the record, and I believe the record is closed as of December 22nd.
Just have a question of with the reduction in height and floors, I believe, are we even talking about 135 room hotel? I think there's some fundamental data missing about what we're considering at this point. And maybe the answer is yes, it still is 135. I'm just curious how that happened.
I think we're still back up to you and your three paths that you laid out.
Yeah.
So,
We still have to pick one,
correct.
right? Yeah, so we have to deliberate right now about whether we want this to just go forward without any further comments from anyone, and we just deliberate on what we've seen, or if we want to allow these.
And you can also
Right.
get there'll be a kind of a staff summary of what's the current status of the record.
Right.
Are we at risk legally if we go ahead and don't let these guys have a final word after we already said give them a final word? That seems a little. I mean,
It would, if you don't allow it, then, and the applicant loses at this level, that would be part of an appeal to the city council for sure.
yeah.
Just like if you allow it to happen and the application is approved, the opponents can appeal to city council and that would be part of their appeal. So you're not the last, no matter what you do tonight, you're not the last word.
Yeah, I believe I alluded to this at our last hearing about procedural changes and asking for them to give us their final statements. But we did say that we would give them the final statement, and so at risk of the procedural defect, I believe we should stand by our word and give them the final say.
And so if we decide to do that, then there's going to be someone else that's providing testimony, the opponents. No.
That's one of the options. You don't have to do it that way. You have the range of procedural options before you. And so you can decide how to proceed. I think the issue is pretty well crystallized.
Well, I think we all have something to say. We don't want to give up that. We're not debating giving up our ability to ask questions, right? Okay.
Okay, so our options are allow everyone in opposition to first give their final response to the revised hotel design before the applicant gives their final concluding remarks, again with no new evidence, or we deny the applicant that opportunity and we just go into deliberation, correct? Those are our options.
Or you allow the applicant to give their final verbal rebuttal with no other.
With no, okay.
Those are the three paths.
I didn't hear whether we are allowed to speak and
Yes.
ask questions.
We'll still deliberate.
That's during deliberation. Can we ask, so we can ask Dustin or we can ask the applicants during deliberation? Do we have to speak among ourselves?
Yeah, I think those three final actions preclude your deliberation. So regardless of those three that you take, planning commission still needs to deliberate after any of those options.
Okay, well, my question is, do the deliberations include me being, or any of us asking you for clarification?
correct.
Or, okay.
So long as there's no new evidence, and usually by way of preventing that, I like to say, as found on page
After the
1 to 600 or 700 on the record, you will find this. That's really an effort to make sure that unintentionally, we do not introduce new evidence here, that we want to keep going back to either the materials that were submitted to you as a part of the initial application, the open record, the continued record, and any staff report. We really need to focus on those things. So when I make clarification, I should say as found on X, and the applicant should make sure they do the same thing as well.
Do we want a motion to move forward with one of the three options from?
Sure.
Well, I think this could go in layers. One, we should decide whether or not to give the applicant the final rebuttal. And then if we do, then we can decide whether or not we are leaving it open for opponents as well.
Okay, so entertain a motion to allow the applicant's right of final.
Just
rebuttal.
one point of clarification, so if we do leave it open, that means we're coming back?
No.
No, we leave it open for, yeah, that feels a little disingenuous because we didn't let people know that they could come and present opposition, so.
That's correct. The agenda does not say, as advertised previously, only that it's rebuttal. That's what the agenda was posted. That's what the record said ahead of time.
Yeah.
So all the way through 7 days in advance, that's what has been advertised.
So, yeah, and my other comment on that is that it sounds like you think that if we let the opponents give their own remarks, that we would somehow have to continue this. But if the applicant has the right of final rebuttal, there will never be a scenario where they don't get to go last. Right? Like, so we're just gonna, the only other thing that's gonna happen is that we're either gonna not let anybody say anything, we're gonna let the applicants say what they need to say and not let anyone else say anything, or we're gonna let opponents say things and then end it with the applicant's response.
That's what I thought.
Okay,
That's what that was.
so
Okay, well,
where do we want to start? A motion for,
we'll motion to allow opposition and applicant to give remarks.
What about us?
we will always get to do
We
that
have deliberation.
after anything that happens.
Yes, second.
We have conversation opportunity here. I think that my issue voting for that is not because I don't want people to be able to provide comment. My reason for voting against that would be people didn't know that they should be here and or present or online or prepare for that. So I think that's unfair to them. And on paper, it looks like they got the opportunity, but in reality, they didn't get the opportunity. So I will vote no on that.
And then the advertised agenda was that we were just gonna listen to the applicant's rebuttal. So we could move with that.
Yeah, why don't we back up and do a motion, just entertain a motion specifically about allowing the applicant to provide their verbal rebuttal.
But you have a motion and a second on the table, so you need to dispense with that before you move.
Oh, yeah, so motion,
Thank you.
sorry, back up. Your motion, the second, was to allow all parties to participate in rebuttal this evening. Let us go down and register our votes, starting with Commissioner Kids.
I am confused about it. I will vote to get things moving here. Yes.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Oh, man. I'm gonna go. Aye.
Okay. So we have a majority in support of allowing everyone to provide their rebuttal this evening. How does this work? Do we have people that are specifically here to provide opponents, to provide their final comments?
Well, let's get people raise their hands, and there may be people online who would like to testify in opposition, and this would be basically
So
kind
no,
of
no new evidence.
no new evidence. It's people's view of the final proposal.
Hey, Dan, one thing that I just want to clarify is I don't know how we would be testifying to until we hear from the applicant and their summary and clarification. And as has been discussed, there's people that assume they weren't going to be able to testify tonight that I think aren't either going to be prepared or aren't available. I don't know how this cures the procedural error.
Okay, I am gonna bring up the comment that Commissioner Little made to me is that his he incorrectly stated he meant that he agreed he would like things to move forward. Should we vote again on this motion?
That's very confusing.
Yes,
So, so let's state the motion again. What was the motion?
The motion was to hear remarks from all parties.
From all parties. So I'm not a big fan of aye and nay. I don't really know what that means. It's not English. So people say yes or no
Yes.
to the motion.
agreed. Okay,
I'll second.
okay, let's go down the line.
Agreed.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
No.
Yes.
No,
I'll say no.
okay.
Okay.
Apologies for the confusion on our first.
Did that make sense, Mike?
Are you asking me, Dan?
Yeah, this is, I'm tracking this same as you are.
Yeah, if I understand, is the commission saying that they voted to allow the applicant and the applicant alone to address them tonight? That was my understanding for the motion.
Failed the motion to.
That's
I'm
maybe.
sorry, it was a motion for everyone, but that
failed. The motion
failed.
failed. So right now we don't have a motion as to what they want to do.
Fair enough.
Okay, okay.
Fair enough.
So we're looking for a motion for what you want to do.
Anyone that would like to propose a new motion? Or what we should do next?
Yeah, so I motion that we move forward with the agenda as planned.
Which includes testimony from the applicant.
Only.
Okay. We have a second.
Second.
Okay, let us vote, starting with Mr. Kitts. Yes or no?
Yes.
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 Chair votes yes. Majority approves the motion to move forward with the applicant's verbal rebuttals only this evening. Have we covered our bases? Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's see, where are we now? Okay, now we are to the point where the applicant will provide your verbal final rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. Again, Ezra Hammer for the record, fuddling with technology, so bear with me here.
Yeah, should be that screen.
Screen one.
And then follow up.
All right. We seeing screen one on your screens?
Ezra, you will see it up there when you successfully.
Okay.
Try one per time. It's not up there yet.
It's
so
not up.
Share.
Whatever's up there, it'll be.
And then hit that word share.
This one here?
Bottom.
Oh, my goodness. All right. All right, 45 minutes in. We've got here. For the record, since there was some crosstalk, I disagree with the insinuations that opposing counsel made regarding how folks are viewing this project. But I will certainly do my best tonight to provide closing rebuttal argument. I'm going to be very clear, nothing you're going to see tonight, something that is not in the public record, full stop. And I'm going to tell you the page number every time I show you an image, okay? I don't want anybody worrying they haven't had an opportunity to review, but this public record is voluminous. It's over 1,000 pages if you look at the application material as well. And I understand that 1,000 pages is a lot to get through. So I'm going to do my best to take from the record only, respond to the direct direction that we are given from the Planning Commission, as well as providing rebuttal to the thematic challenges that we've heard to this project so many weeks. So thank you again for bearing with me this evening. Thank you for reading what is upwards of 1,000 pages. I understand that this is complex, and we appreciate all of your time as volunteers being with us here tonight. Importantly, this is from page 420 of the record. This is a rendering of the proposed project, which again is a hotel, 135 rooms, remains 135 rooms. It includes a spa and a restaurant, both of which are open to the public and intended for outward-facing public use, okay? This is what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to go over, you asked us to respond directly to the concerns that we heard from our neighbors, the church. You asked us to show the visuals of the project in the built environment. There was substantial discussion around traffic analysis, how that's done, what it means, should other things have been considered, parking demand. Are we entitled to use the in lieu fee, or is that something that requires subsequent analysis? How to measure building height, and importantly, compatibility within the existing community. This is page 425 of the record, and this is just to reset us here. So we are in the C2 zone. This is commercial zone. We're in downtown. Your commercial zone is where you put your commercial uses. There's been a lot of conversation around where hotels should go in this city. The commercial zone allows for hotels. You generally keep it out of the yellow parts of the map. This is page 426 of the record. This is the building site. As you remember, we have one of the largest assemblages of property in the downtown area. And as the record shows, and as we'll show again tonight, the topographical challenges of this site are bordering on the unique and highly unusual. And that is because of how big the property is. This is these are from pages 541 and 543 of the record, okay? We were given explicit direction from this commission and by one of the planning commissioners themselves, who's affiliated with the Riverside Community Church, to ensure that nothing our project would do would have any structural impacts with regards to the church. If you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see an image from a report that was prepared back in April of 2025. It's in the record. And again, recreated here from page 543. We had an initial conversation with the church, and we had prepared a geotechnical and structural analysis based on the very real concerns that the church raised about a retaining wall. Following our meeting, and again, this is in the record, we met numerous times with the church to review this geotechnical report, to listen to their concerns, and to ensure that their engineers understood what our engineers understood, which is our project will in no way undermine the structural integrity of an important community asset. What you'll see here on the right-hand side in red is a portion of the existing retaining wall, which is specifically being retained as part of any future construction to ensure that there is no structural impact to the church. So let me just be very clear. We met and conferred. We reshared analysis that had been done. We listened and we spoke about the importance of ensuring that everything that we do will in no way impact the church. And I'm pleased to say that if you look here on the left, you'll see in the record, page 541, the church saying that they do not oppose the project. The second explicit direction that we were given from the Planning Commission was to demonstrate the visual of the project within the built environment. This starts in the record at page 463. And what we're going to see here is a series of slides that show just that. What you'll notice, starting off the view here on State, is the significant topographical shift as you move east-west. Our site is unique in that we have significant topographical shift moving both east-west and north-south. But as we all know with State Street, there's a very significant slope in this part of town, and that's why you see the building looking like it does. Moving on, this is just up the block. This is the record at 464. Here we are with the county building looking towards the project site. And what you'll notice is that the project appears small in relation to the county building. And again, these are adjacent. They're separated by 6th, but because of the topographical shift, which we'll re-show, the project sits much lower than its neighboring buildings. This is page 465 of the record. And here again, you see the relationship on 6th between the county building and the project. Because the project is situated in a way where it is away from 6th, and because of the topographical east-west shift, you'll notice that the project appears lower than the neighboring building. This is our neighboring property, and there have been a lot of these similar visuals in the record. We've heard from our neighbor across Sherman Way that this project will block their view. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This project is bigger than the one-story bungalow directly across the street from it. I'm not gonna tell you it isn't, because that would be disingenuous. But it is a commercial building in the commercial zone. And what's important to understand is the relationship of that building to the overall neighborhood within the zone, and importantly, how construction could occur in the future. And we don't need to go that far. We just go down the street, a couple of buildings. This is still on Sherman. This is page 467 of the record. Here we have some beautiful buildings. These are about 20 years old. They use the same sort of step terrace construction that our project utilizes. And you'll notice that they too are far larger and taller than the building that they are adjacent to. So yes, directly across from us, there's a one-story building, but next to that, there are very tall buildings, which if measured from the street in the same way that our project is measured, these buildings are actually taller, and that evidence is in the record. This is page 432 of the record. This is one of my favorite images in the record because I think it shows how downtown Hood River touches and feels. It's eclectic. It has unique buildings. Some of them stand out. Some of them blend in. Some of them take up all of the property. Some of them do not. But what they have in common is a unique touch and feel that when placed together creates a very fun environment to work, live, and play in. The third thing I want to talk about, and this is page 442 and 444 of the record, traffic analysis. The record has 2 traffic analyses in it, and as part of the open record period, we provided a subsequent traffic analysis, which was then reviewed and concurred with by the city's contract traffic engineer. So we have upwards of 5 traffic engineer analyses in the records saying the same thing. And that is that our project and the trips that it will create does not trigger offsite improvements. And that's just using the systems and the formulas that Hood River has adopted in compliance with state law. There is not ambiguity. There were 2 intersections that warranted subsequent conversation. The first is Cascade and Second, and that's at page 444 of the record. And there was a lot of public testimony about how this intersection is challenging. And the city of Hood River acknowledges this fact. You acknowledge it so much that you built it into your transportation system plan. The city has made a determination, a legislative determination, that changes should not occur at that intersection, regardless of traffic flow. So there is, now our project doesn't change the traffic flow, but even if it did, the city has determined the changes should not occur at that intersection. And so for those in the community that are unhappy with that decision, the process for addressing that is through the comprehensive plan update process and your transportation system plan. The other intersection that got a lot of conversation was State and 6, and this is at 442 of the record. There again, the traffic created by the project does not warrant offsite improvements. It's a black and white yes or no issue, and it does not, and the city has said it does not. But we asked our traffic engineers to dig a little bit deeper. We said, even if the project doesn't warrant it, what could occur at this intersection in the future that might improve traffic flow? And so they did their analysis, and this is in the record. And what we learned was that the significant challenges at State and 6 are related to left turn movements from private properties. People turning left out of their properties is creating challenges with traffic flow there. And the solution, because we had a lot of people at the first hearing asking about solutions, the solution to that is a raised median in the middle of the road to prevent left turn from private properties at that intersection. Again, our project doesn't warrant that, but if the city wished to pursue transportation improvements at that intersection, that is something that traffic engineers might recommend. These are pages 477, 478 of the public record. And we put them here to discuss comparables because there was substantial conversation here at this commission and in the public at large about why we were doing what we were doing. We said we did an analysis to determine that this was an optimal use, but we also found that had we done something else, the traffic impacts that we're hearing so much concern about would be worse. That if we were to revert back to the grocery store use, the traffic impacts would be more significant than the proposal. If we were to do residential, the impacts would be more significant. So again, that's on page 477, 478 of the record, and warrants mention, given that there were comments about what should be built at this site. Moving on, this is page 445 of the public record. There was a lot of conversation about parking, how much parking was required, and importantly, how much the project should provide and in what context. The city of Hood River has a very unique parking code section. Most jurisdictions, when you think about parking requirements for hotels, you tie a minimum parking space or parking space equivalent to room. So you'll see 1 space for every room or half space for every room as the standard. In Hood River, you do things a little bit unique, as I said. And what you do is you tie it to square footage. And so you say that if I have a hotel with 100 rooms, that's 100,000 square feet, and I have a hotel with 100 rooms, it's 400,000 square feet, the latter should have 4 times as much parking, even if you have the same number of rooms. Now, what's unique about our project is because of the touch and feel that we're hoping to create, we've created a lot of non-usable space, extra space. The halls are wider than your code requires. The lobby is larger than necessary to simply serve patrons. right? We want to provide comfortable space. And as part of that, we're providing things that are larger than necessary. These hotel rooms are up to 400 plus square feet in size. And these are larger hotel rooms. And so with those larger features comes higher parking requirements. And so the city of Hood River requires 183 parking space equivalents, not parking spaces, but parking space equivalents. The city says, because of the size, the square footage, not because of the room count, but because of the size, you need to provide 183 parking space equivalents. And that can be done either with parking spaces or with in lieu fees. And importantly, there's no discretionary process or additional review that needs to occur for that choice to be made. It's up to the applicant. You have bucket A and you have bucket B. Pick the right one, go ahead and put parking spaces on site and pay the fee for the rest. And there are some hotels that were built recently downtown with no parking spaces because that was the right mix for them. And there was no special authorization that they needed to get in order to do so. They simply followed your code. And so we said, okay, the code says 183, what do we need? And so we hired a parking consultant to do a parking demand analysis of hotel rooms. And we looked nationwide and we looked at all sorts of situations, constrained, unconstrained, urban, rural, et cetera, et cetera. And we found that the type of hotel we're building and the type of community that we're building in generally has 0.74 spaces per room. So you would do 3 spaces for every 4 rooms. And we found that there was a trend to put more parking, but we're seeing that trend kind of top out at 0.82 spaces. So 8 spaces for every 10 rooms. And we made a determination that that was insufficient for the project. That despite what we were seeing in the market, and despite the fact that we could provide 0 parking spaces, we thought 120 was the right number. We thought above and beyond that parking demand analysis. And we thought that specifically because the type of amenities that are included in the project. Again, that hotel and that spa, and the desire to have them being community serving, because that will be better for the project and better for the community. And in order for people who are not staying at the hotel to come and use that, we wanted to ensure that there was parking. So that's where we get the 120 spaces from, based on the city requirements coupled with our own traffic demand analysis. Okay. So now we're going to move on to talk about height. There was a lot of conversation in the record about concerns with how height was being measured. And this is a picture. This is in the geotech report. So this is in the application material that you all have access to and has been in the public record on page 7. And what you'll see is the condition of the site. And if you've ever been out there, you'll notice that if you go to the southern end, there's the sheer wall, that just kind of jumps up at you. And that is because the site is significantly topographically challenged. And we see that on the survey, page 1 of the survey, for those keeping track at home. And here we see that the property has a grade change of approximately 60 feet. So if you start in the northeast corner and you go to the southwest corner, you're gonna increase by 60 feet, which, roughly 6 stories, right? It's a significant grade change on the property. And it's unique because it's so big, but it's not unaccounted for. So this is your municipal code. It's also on page 364 of the record. This is how you measure building height. And there are 2 ways to do so in Hood River. And it depends on how much grade change there is within the building site. And there was a very good question last time I was here when the question was, well, how do you measure it? Like, how is the thing measured? And so we put that in the record and it starts at page 450. So you take a building segment when you have a terraced building, or a building if you do not have a terraced building, and you go 5 feet out from the corner. So you take the building site and you go 5 feet out, and then you measure each one of those points and you determine whether or not there's more than 10 feet of grade change within those 4 points. And if there are, then you use number 2 in your building code, which gives you an extra 10 feet essentially, because That's the way the building code reads. And so this is segment 1 of the building, again, pages 450 and 451 of the record. And what you'll see here is we go on the right, you go 5 feet out, you measure, you determine that between 240 and a half and 229 is more than 10 feet. That puts us in segment 2. You then measure 10 feet up from the lowest grade and you go 45 feet. And so what you'll see here is that for segment 1, the allowable height is 45 feet and we're building 44 and a half feet tall. This is our pages 452 and 453 of the record. Excuse me. This is segment 2. And we do the exact same thing, right? So you go 5 feet out, you measure the difference between the highest and the lowest datum here, 250 and 233. That's more than 10. That puts us in segment number 2. You go 10 feet up from the lowest point and you measure 45 feet here, the allowable height, again, 45 feet. That's the only allowable height number. And here, this segment is 43 and a half feet tall. Moving on to segment 3. This is on page 454 and 455 of the record. Again, we look at that 5 feet out from the building segment, determine whether or not there's more than 10 feet of grade change. Here, the maximum height, again, 45 feet, and the actual height, 41 feet. Segment 4, we do the same thing. This is on pages 456 and 457 of the record. Here, the allowable height is 45 and the actual is 38. And finally, with segment 5, we do the exact same thing one more time. We determine that the allowable height is 45 feet and the actual height here is 32 feet. So you look at each segment as it is terraced and you go through the exact same exercise. And it's all just dependent on grade change, right? The city has said we have parts of the city that have a lot of grade change. So we measure height differently in those areas than we do in areas where we don't have as much grade change. Okay. There was some questions about changes to the project. If you remember the first time we were here, there was in the staff report, there were some notations around improperly calculated building height. And so went back and checked it again. We had calculated an error. And we also had heard substantial comments from the community about the fact that folks felt the building was too big. And one of the ways that we think about big is height. And so we reduced segments 2, 3, and 4 by 7, 10, and 10 feet. And we extended segment 2 westward to account for that lost height. So we want 135 rooms. That's the right number for us. We hear people that it's too big. We've purposely left a lot of the property undeveloped. So there's a whole half of the property that's just an asphalt parking lot. We'll extend the building there and we'll lower the height. So it's lowering and extending. Moving on. Beyond height, we heard a lot of conversation about compatibility. And for us, and this is, forgive me, this is page 427 of the record. For us, compatibility is really understood in several different ways. Specifically from like, how does the building touch and feel compared with other buildings near it? And we understand that by articulation and glazing. And we also understand it by height and by bulk in relationship to the property that it sits on, which the planners will tell us they call floor area ratio. This is page 682 of the record. And floor area ratio is a tool that planners use to understand bulk. How much of the property is the project taking up? It's understood as a ratio between the square footage of the property and the amount of floor area in the building that you're building. So if you have a 100 square foot piece of land and you build 100 square feet of building on it, that's a 1-to-1 FAR. We call it FAR, or floor area ratio. And so here we see how our project compares with some of the neighboring properties. You'll notice that based on how height is measured, we're actually about 30 feet lower than the county courthouse, right? You notice there's a giant berm when you go to the county courthouse, right? This kind of earthen wall rises up next to you and then the building is perched on top of it. That's not how Hood River permits construction anymore. So that's kind of a vestige of how you used to do things back in the day. And the new rules don't allow for that sort of earthwork. And so the height there is much taller, but the FAR is a little bit smaller. If you look at the Sherman Loft townhomes, which we showed visuals compared to, this is directly south of the project site. You'll notice that these are also a little bit taller and about twice as much FAR as our project. So more bulk on the property than the bulk on our property. We also have the Lightwell Hotel, again, about twice as much bulk and about the same height. This is still page 682. We see the county library, much less FAR and a similar height. We see the Ferris building, which has, again, about twice as much FAR and a little bit shorter. We see the county building, which has about as much FAR and is a little bit shorter, but feels much bigger because of where it's situated in the topographical shift. And we see Riverside Church, which is technically taller, but again, because of the grade shift that occurs there and less floor area ratio. Moving on, this is on page 683 of the record. We also have the comparison at 310 Oak, much more FAR. We have the Full Sail Brewing, much more FAR. The Heilbronner building, and then buildings that are taller but less FAR, the 616 Industrial and CenturyLink building. And the little text box there, I'm afraid it's showing up a little bit small, but that's from the staff report at page 683. And it says what I'm saying to you right now, which is if you think about bulk in the context of compatibility in FAR, the project sits about in the middle of everything around it. So it can't get much more compatible than that. It's not smaller, it's not bigger, it's Goldilocks right in the middle. This image is from page 429 of the record. And again, this is kind of a line shot, but with the topography taken into account. And again, you note that as you move up towards the county building, because of the grade change, things appear bigger, even though I just told you the county building is actually technically smaller, right? Because from a compatibility standpoint, the farther something up is on a hill, the larger it feels. And all of this kind of goes into the thinking around what is compatibility, right? You look at the height, which we talked about, we look at the bulk or the FAR, and you also look at how the building interacts with its surrounding community. This is page 431 of the record. This is a 5-minute walk shed from the property, and you'll notice, well, where we are right now, but more importantly, a lot of the businesses that we know and love in downtown Hood River, right? This is part and parcel of the community. It is compatible with the community because it is integrated into the community. And importantly, we talked about vehicular trips earlier and concerns around traffic. The new hotels, many of the new hotels which have been built in Hood River have been built down by the river. And so it's more for folks that want to come and enjoy downtown. It's often it's a car ride. You hop in the car and you got to drive up and you got to find parking, and that can be challenging. Our property and our project is in downtown. These are walk sheds. So if I'm a resident or if I'm visiting the spa for a day and I want to have some of the delicious ice cream in downtown Hood River, or I want to visit the library, these are walks that I'm taking. These are not car rides that I'm taking. So again, in the context of compatibility, you have the built structure itself, but you also have how it interacts with the surrounding community. So again, back on page 420 of the record, I want to thank you for bearing with us. I know this has been a unique night. It certainly has been for us, but we want to reiterate everything that we've expressed previously in the record, which is our gratitude to the city for allowing us to work and to get to this point. We want to thank you again for taking the time to consider our project. happy, I have the project team here with engineers, and we can answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any final clarifying questions for the applicant?
I've got a lot of questions,
Okay,
but
and Dan and Dustin, I assume you will help guide us if we are navigating into the no new evidence territory.
I get pretty tongue tied, so I wrote down everything. I'll read it and try not to fumble too much. I guess this is for Dustin and maybe for the commission too. This is only my second commission meeting. So I haven't been enough of them to really understand the process. Or let me start with this. I did read the Hood River Planning Commissioner's Handbook, which is
I'm sorry, this was your first rodeo.
that's 1,000 pages.
It's a big rodeo.
The takeaway from that was, this is a quote, "The building's use or impact will be in place for some time, maybe generations, and this is the opportunity to decide if it will be beneficial or not." That's kind of where I went from, and it went on from there. So in my mind, there are conflicting directives for the Planning Commission between the comprehensive plan and the municipal code of the city. The comprehensive plan states, this is goal 1, there should be citizen involvement in all aspects of decision-making. Goal 2 states, the plan is a legal document and a statement of public policy and can be used as more than a guide in decision-making by the Planning Commission. So the comprehensive plan goes on to direct us to maintain the quality of livability in the area, balance with economic health, encourage design standards consistent with quality of life issues, respecting the character of the town, engender economic sustainability by supporting small businesses, make sure new development is in scale to surrounding neighborhoods, and ensure safety standards for bicyclists and pedestrians. That's all from the comprehensive plan. But then that's all from the comprehensive plan. But then the comprehensive plan continues with only factual testimony and findings related to applicable approval criteria outlined in the Hood River Municipal Code shall be considered. So can the Planning Commission take so this is Dustin's question, I think. So can the Planning Commission, can we take public comments relating to quality of life, small town atmosphere, height, bulk, scale, compatibility, safety, traffic, and parking into consideration for goals 1 and 2? If those comments address legitimate concerns that are in conflict with or in violation of stated goals in the comprehensive plan. If not, then how do we acknowledge and reconcile the considerable concerns expressed by the public?
Ready? So this is a good question. And this was listed and somewhat outlined in our presentation before, and then it shows up in summary, I believe, and I don't have the page off the top of my head. It is the cover page between the open record submission between 12.1 and 12.8. This request before the Planning Commission comes out of, it's a site plan review. So it is not, and as listed in the approval criteria with 1716, which is in one of the things we listed before, the comprehensive plan is not the approval criteria. And as organized, the city zoning code really is supposed to be the implementing agent of the comp plan. So although there are, welcome all comments, your decision is based on compliance with the code. So you're not being asked to evaluate the comp plan, nor are you being asked how the zoning code, which is drafted to implement the comp plan, lines up or not. You're not having to do some balancing. Whereas other decisions, such as a conditional use approval, if you go to the conditional use section within 1706, it's going to say, evaluate this under the comp plan, do the list. If it was a zone change, it would say, evaluate the comp plan, and you see in our decisions and your decisions that come out of Planning Commission, those specific findings. You will see a laundry list of findings in compliance with goal. This, as a site plan, is not subject to that decision. It does not say evaluate the comp plan, do the balancing act of housing versus economic development, by complying and going through this process, you are essentially following the comp plan and the way that it's administered.
Yeah, well, it is kind of confusing because it does tell you the public comment should be taken into consideration and that can be a criteria for our decisions. But you're saying that's not the case. So if the public is writing letters and testifying, is all that for no reason? I mean, we can't take any of that into consideration. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
No, you should take it into consideration,
But you can't
especially
use
if
it
if it aligns with the code. So the public's analysis, should be also looking at, planning commission saying, you guys need to apply the code. Now, other statements that don't align with that, you can still hear them, you can still evaluate them. However, when it comes to your decision, whether you're a Hilton Rewards Club member or a Marriott member, or whether you love hotels or think they're a waste of time, is not relevant to planning commission's decision. You're here to base your findings of fact, not findings of opinion, findings of fact on the record, and elaborate that, write it down, and send that on.
So anything in the comprehensive plan that people have brought up or that I've read that I consider pertinent is irrelevant.
If you think it's embodied in the code and how the code reads and how your interpretation of the code looks, there's some room there. However, just because the comp plan says it and it doesn't show up in the zoning code, that's not an analysis. So you can see in my report, I don't go through and list the comprehensive plan criteria. I go through and list the zoning code criteria and articulate how those are met. So the comp plan is really intended to build a zoning code around it and follow through, especially in a matter of limited land use decisions such as this. So as I mentioned this before in the hearing, this is typically a site plan as a limited land use decision. It's a matter that my staff and I evaluate, given the size and gravity of this, is really the only reason why it's before the planning commission now, to help ensure added transparency on the matter. You may say that complies with goal 1. You may not. However, there's a reason why those goals are embedded in the comp plan. I had the opportunity, whenever I make a decision, I advertise it. That comes from goal 1. Having the opportunity to move something to planning commission, that goes with goal 1. Having your decisions written down in writing, advertised, and provided to everyone who's participated in this hearing, that aligns with goal 1. But so that's where those goals and those comprehensive plans live within the rules and the regulations that we script and follow through on. You're not going back to the comp plan, you're evaluating the code. So the comp plan lives in the zoning code and all its little pieces and processes. That's really how you evaluate. You're evaluating the zoning code, not the comp plan.
Okay, so everything that I mentioned, quality of life, small town atmosphere, height, bulk, scale, compatibility, traffic, all that is irrelevant. We're not supposed to consider that, or?
So those things live in the zoning code. 1720 is traffic and access. Zoning code lives with
Say
it.
that, I said there's a lot of other things there too, compatibilities. I mean, where do you go? I mean,
Compatibility lives in the zoning code. Parking lives in the zoning
so
code.
is compatibility subjective? I mean, with one person's compatibility is another person's non-compatibility? I mean,
I would call it, we would refer to it as an ambiguous term.
yeah.
And
Well,
so,
these are.
this is where we have a hearing, we evaluate it. The applicant brings its statement to saying, here's how we believe we've met it.
Okay.
I mean, that's where it goes back to the applicant's burden of proof is, I guarantee when it's ambiguous, we're all gonna have our impressions of what compatibility is.
Okay.
And generally speaking, this is, a hearing to hear how this proposal or any proposal meets the compatibility
You
standard
said
or doesn't.
compatibility is not in the zoning code though, right?
It is in the zoning code.
Okay.
That's in
I think
1760.
that's gonna be probably a big part of our deliberation will be about compatibility in bulk and scale. So I think we can,
Just wondering how you proceed, how do you make a decision? I mean, if it's.
as part of the deliberation, we'll talk about
Okay,
compatibility in our.
I just had that,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh,
I have more.
you said you have more.
Well, this is for the applicants. Should I wait for that or should? I don't want to,
Nope, once we're done with your questions, we're gonna move forward with deliberation.
We could also begin deliberation and see if we can't answer.
that's gonna be part of the
Questions.
That would be fine
Go
as
with it.
well.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Then we can see what we have collectively to.
This
Yep.
really isn't, this really isn't a question for them. It's just a statement. And there's this little question in the back. Should I go ahead with this or?
Sure.
All right, I'm going to read it again. Okay, I'm all about traffic. Actually, I've been here since 1984 and I've seen a lot. I remember when Safeway was there, the traffic is an issue. Okay, so besides what I consider a severely flawed traffic count done in early March, I also believe ODOT and DKS erred in 2006 by not including State Street and Sherman Street as part of the interchange area management plan overlay zone, especially with the site being in the central business district. ODOT policy is clear. Studies, quote, studies generally include areas within half a mile of an interstate off-ramp. But in 2006, DKS stated, while the southern boundary at State Street is significantly closer to the interchange than 1/2 mile, this limit was deemed appropriate for this area, given the changes in topography and existing residential neighborhoods to the south that are unlikely to be redeveloped within the planning horizon. The same study put Rand Road in the overlay zone well outside the 1/2 mile standard. So I don't understand why that happened. I think that was a big mistake. It's a little late now, but also in the 2006 DKS ODOT study, they continue with, quote, approval of a development of substantial size, partially or entirely within the overlay zone that is consistent with the underlying zoning, but represents a worst-case trip generation scenario should require a review. Plus a regular review was recommended every 5 years. If either was done, then when and what traffic count did they use? Chapter 3, page 20 of the DKS management plan is basically a warning as to how careful the city needs to be with development in the relation to Second Street due to the inability to mitigate traffic in this area. The applicant's response to criticism of their March 3rd traffic count is telling in the terms they use to defend it. These are quotes defending their traffic count. Unsupported seasonal data, hypothetical, assumed, seasonality as a concept only makes sense if it's backed by real data counts, arbitrary percentile increase, discretionary factor, whatever that is. And they also added, if a hypothetical seasonal increase were applied, most of the intersections that were required to be studied would not see an appreciable change in the level of service except for 2nd Street and 6th Street at State. Really? Taking into account a full hotel plus 2 restaurants, a spa, and a convention center, the traffic delays and backups would become treacherous with no possible fix ever.
Mike, I'm sorry, is that your comment about this or is this?
It's a question. I can't question.
No, I'm asking what your question is because I am confused about what your question is.
Okay, okay, so this is a question. How does the applicant's projected $10 million yearly contribution to Hood River's economy jibe with no appreciable change in traffic delays? That's the question. But I needed some context to it, I thought.
Yeah, I don't,
That's too much? That's,
I don't know that it falls under the
okay, well, I asked,
traffic related
I asked.
project things
I
that we
did
can
ask
consider.
some clarification before I went ahead with that.
Okay.
Wanted to get it out too, so.
Okay. That's, oh. Okay, well,
Should we kind of let me structure the deliberation by topic?
yeah, I think that would be good. I have some comments of my own separated into topic,
Okay.
but
You want to start with traffic?
sure.
Sure.
Start with traffic.
I already, that was me. So
Yeah,
They don't have to answer that. That was basically, I didn't know if that was should have been put out during deliberation, or since I was already going, I thought I'd just get it off my chest. So
sure.
I've got more too. but-
Okay. Well, I will be happy to go first in that it's my opinion, reading all of these materials, that this project meets all of the applicable traffic related requirements. I understand that there are issues that people have with levels of service in various areas that are related in one way or another, or issues about belief that some seasonal data adjustment needs to be applied. but there is no requirement for them to do that. And the levels of service that are listed in the traffic reports are at acceptable levels. And that's, in my opinion, where our ability to judge that issue ends.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's been confirmed by the DKS, responses like a couple times to their TIA. I do think and like Second and State is going to be a failed intersection at some point, and that could be because of this background data. And even if nothing happened, that would happen. But I guess it doesn't, in my mind, mean that if this development goes through, that it's not going to contribute to that failure. I mean, both are true, right?
Kind of my
It's gonna,
Dustin is, shouldn't the developer be responsible to mitigate some of the impacts caused by increased traffic?
even if it's going to fail anyway.
There's gonna be an impact.
Right.
There's no mitigation possible. Everyone admits that. So
Well,
where do you go from there?
And they did talk about what mitigation options there would be
A
going,
raised walk.
going beyond their scope that they needed to for the application. And yeah, I mean, I think not having people not take a left-hand turn there is probably the only way. I mean, you'd have to loop.
Does the developer intend to put anything towards the impact that they're gonna be adding?
Before we
Okay.
do that,
The limit on the city's ability to condition this project is based on the code. And unless mitigation is based on a code requirement, you can't require mitigation. And for traffic engineering issues such as this, you cannot second guess the city's traffic engineer. You're obligated in a technical area like that, like stormwater calculations. You can't run your own calcs. You have to rely on the city engineer's evaluation of stormwater calculations. So the city is limited in its ability to impose exactions on development. If it's not in the code, then we're limited. We can't do that.
And just to be clear for the record, DKS is working as the city's engineer in this capacity. So oftentimes, just for clarification and those viewing, you will see an applicant provide their own analysis and they will make their assertions and their arguments, and then the city staff will evaluate. In this instance, DKS is hired on as a subject matter expert to review this proposal on behalf of the city. So just as we use them by name, I just want to make sure that you all are aware and that those viewing these proceedings know that when we mention DKS, we are mentioning the city's hired traffic consultant.
You know, that's, we understood that, or I understood that, but I was wondering what information they used was information from their traffic study that they reviewed and okayed from a March study.
They will do a couple things. Oftentimes they will scope the study. DKS actually runs the model associated with the city's traffic analysis and forecast, and that they are the consulting engineer both for the transportation system plan. So they provide that backdrop. They are involved in the audit of those findings and proceedings. And you see in the record, you'll see an initial study come up. You'll see DKS saying, no applicant, you're not right. You need to adjust these factors. And then you see in the record another traffic study provided, and DKS then responding saying, okay, your analysis, your assumptions, your trip pass-throughs, we believe this now, and we believe the analysis and the terms behind it are accurate. So they don't just agree or disagree. They'll make comments and demand changes until the point where here we have basically findings saying, okay, we're at the point we conclude this is reasonable. We agree with the not mitigation, or we don't have a recommendation for mitigation from this applicant. And we actually included that, I believe, in the December 8th to 15th, very intentionally and for the purpose of this hearing. We wanted to make sure that DKS was not on the fence with this recommendation to you all.
Can I respond to the question? May I respond?
Mhm.
So, so we're using terms and some of them are terms of art. So when you ask whether the project, Commissioner Little, will mitigate its traffic impacts, I'm sorry, Commissioner Lido. When you ask whether we'll mitigate our impacts, the answer is yes. So mitigation occurs in two ways. It occurs based on the traffic which the project will generate, which then triggers a series of fees that go to the city, which are then used for building out the transportation system plan in unencumbered ways. So for this project, we are paying $576,000 in transportation fees. So we pay that to the city bundles that with other dollars that it has, it bonds against that, and it builds out traffic improvements consistent with the transportation system plan, which is part of the comprehensive plan, the guiding document for your city. The second question around mitigation is whether off-site mitigation is required. So that's, we talked about these two intersections where there was a lot of good questions around. So to determine whether improvements need to be made to a particular intersection, you look at the traffic counts, and that's the yes, no, black, white that I talked about before and the DPS reviewed. So if you don't trigger improvements to a specific intersection, then you don't make those improvements, but you still and always pay your transportation system fees. So the city can use those fees in whatever way it sees fit to build out the transportation system plan. So again, here we're paying $576,000 in transportation impact fees to mitigate the impact of the trips created by the project.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, what kind of, there's no mitigation possible. I don't know, what could any amount of money do? I mean, if it was $50 million, what could happen? I mean, there's no mitigation. So where's the money just going to sit there? I don't get it.
I mean, I think it's agreed upon that we all know that there are traffic problems that are generational at this point in Hood River and that the city is still trying to address. But whether or not it is relevant to our decision-making capacity for this project, like I hear your concern for sure. We all do.
There's also federal law and state law dealing with the limits on local government's ability to impose exactions like that on a developer, that you're able to require a developer to address the impacts that they cause. And under state law, you do that in large part through system development charges, because, for example, if a new interchange is warranted after many years of development, you can't make the last developer through the door pay to construct an interchange, since it's the collective trip generation of many, many developments. And so in order to do that, that's how federal law says that you're limited to exactions that have a rational nexus. So if they don't generate any trips, say it's an old folks home where people don't drive to, there's no nexus. And then if there is a nexus, it has to be proportional to the impact. So the proportional impact is not to construct an entire interchange. It's an incremental cost. And so the theory behind system development charges is that's a fee that developers pay to account for incremental impacts to the city's transportation system generally. It's very difficult legally to require a development to pay for off-site improvements. That's a limit. The property line is basically the limit of your legal ability to require an intersection to be changed, or, off-site improvements are very difficult to require legally.
I understand all that. It's just my concern is the fact that there's no mitigation. That basically it can be done ever, no matter what, through them or anything in the future. If the town grows, we have what we have at Second Street and State here.
You should run for city council, because that's an issue that the council struggles with, how to address these system-wide impacts when you have many years of incremental development that cause the need for these improvements. It's a difficult thing to fund, but you, like the city in general, is limited in your ability to require a particular developer to fix a deficiency that is pre-existing, and the entire cost of fixing can't be attributed to one development. You got to spread the cost over time, over its space.
My question just kind of stems from something that Mike Connor brought up about the mitigation. And what he said, the 1720, the traffic impact analysis section of the code. It says that if the proposed development shall cause one or more of the effects in section 1720 above, or other traffic hazard or negative impact to a transportation. You can go on, but that's kind of where I'm coming from with this question. It's just, are they violating the code?
Actually, it's good you raised that. That section actually says if one of these conditions exists, you're going to provide a traffic impact analysis.
Yeah.
And so checking the box, we absolutely have provided a traffic impact analysis. So you can see if there's a certain number of hourly trips, that code, if you backtrack it, it basically says one of these things that happen, these folks are not going to be able to just propose a development. They will have to have a credentialed traffic impact analysis that's evaluated. So we could say that box has been submitted. We've reviewed it.
Can I ask a hypothetical question? If the traffic, Hood River's population triples in the summer, and you assume that the traffic count was done, and you triple it, would that make any difference? And I mean, it doesn't matter what the traffic count was. It could be infinite, and it'd still be okay for them to, no matter what, if every intersection in town was impacted by it, would it not matter? Would it not matter? Because
You're questioning the validity of their traffic counts.
it was hypothetical, I said. I mean, it wasn't in March, and
Okay.
there's
I think that's,
I don't understand that.
it's a good question, and it actually goes back to some of the DKS analysis we asked our traffic engineer
I read all that. Yeah.
and basically their assessment is if you want to seasonally factor these requests in terms of traffic impact analysis, you'll need to change your rules. You'll need to city will need to change its data. The city will need to change its collection, and the city needs to be mindful at risk that if you start sizing your traffic facilities and transportation to meet a peak hour demand, there may be some real consequences there too. You build a 3-lane highway where Oak Street now exists, you're going to change the character of your downtown. You may size your infrastructure to meet a peak demand, but you eat up the sidewalks and it doesn't feel like Oak Street anymore. Those are some real comprehensive trade-offs that are thought about at the comp plan level, at the TSP level, not necessarily at somebody's application. So that's really, and this shows up in that DKS memo as commentary of city needs to have its own analysis of its own process, not at the time of application.
And it has been thought of, and it's reflected in your TSP and your comp plan, that you don't size your transportation system based on the peak demand in the middle of summer. It's more of an averaged demand so that you don't have overbuilt intersections and interchanges.
Does that include underbuilt as well? I mean,
At times during the summer, they'll be underbuilt. There'll be congestion. And that's the price you pay by not building your system to accommodate the peak flow. You'll have congestion.
Shall we talk about parking?
I would prefer we just move straight to the building height and compatibility discussion. Because that's probably gonna take, I assume, a little bit longer than the other things on this list, in my opinion. And I'd like to get that out of the way. Anybody want to start?
With the building height, for Dustin, I think there was a lot of comment on it being higher than what our definition of height is in the river. And we talked about the different standards for code. So I just would like to get an explanation from you why the stepped up terracing and massing in the height is allowed in this situation versus it just being looked at as one single lot.
Yeah, if you, going back to the building height definition, which is really come into play in 1980, that's ordinance 1488 and then ordinance 1690, which are both in, and that was a 1993 revision. You can see two different scenarios outlined in the code. One for buildings that basically have less than 10 feet of grade change, you measure from the high side. For buildings that more than 10 feet of grade change within the area, you measure from the lowest point and plus 10 feet from that lowest area, evaluating. Then there is a section within it that says segmented or terraced buildings shall be measured and basically none of those will exceed the greater height. So that's lived in in that height definition for 45 years now. Really, I don't think it's ever been tested at this extent. We don't have a long precedential history. My initial staff report called that and said they are calling upon and relying upon this, and it's unclear. I think the applicant did request that later, saying we need some direction here. And within that, they outlined and refined their decision, or they refined their application. I made findings on those ambiguous terms. Where is zero? Which in this case, it's pre-development grade and reasons why. Again, it's not defined in the code. At that point, it requires some level of interpretation. We're here. The idea that a segmented terraced building provision in there means we evaluate each segment. I raised the comparison between the building code at the time, which really almost has the identical language that our code has, drawing some comparisons there and then incorporating the graphic that actually comes from the building code. Previously, UBC, which later became translated to the IBC to incorporate the international aspects of Canada, in which is based, our code is very much based around, we have the Oregon Structural Specialty Code, which is born from the IBC, the International Building Code. Drawing those comparisons, basically stating it is plausible that given a site that is 65 feet in grade, that has 20 feet of retaining walls, that a step building analysis is a plausible look at how this works. Otherwise, in this circumstance, having a building that can exceed building height, otherwise the alternative being, if you evaluated this from a single point and measured it across the site, you would have a building that could essentially be 20 feet under the street and violate the building height. I don't think that's a plausible approach. There's something in the segmented terraced building analysis that is a sensible look at it. The applicant has responded within, and I think they recited the pages of each segment, breaking each down to its pre-development grade, its lowest point, its maximum height, and basically, that's their statement to you, saying we believe following this methodology, we comply with your regs.
I think he's looking for your professional opinion.
Oh,
Yeah.
Do I buy that?
And
Do I
guess-
buy that a segmented or terraced building analysis is a plausible? Yes, I do.
Yeah, and I think blindly, just when I initially saw the first staff report,
I saw it as, we take the lowest point, add 10 plus 45. That's what we can do point blank. But it seems like we're going to the different standards of code to give us a more sensible height option for this particular site. I understand it's very complicated because of the steps up. And so are we allowing the segmentation of a building because of the lot, or is this just standard practice that we would use?
the UBCS,
No,
IBCS,
and again, I don't want to create those as because the IBC says that it's okay. That is absolutely not the case. It's only been used as reference to kind of call it disambiguation of the city's own zoning code. Like our code has some gray areas. How do we start evaluating that and making those points that require interpretation more clear, that is the case. It's really not because of the lot. It's actually because of the building itself. It's a combination of both. Typically, it has been a single point +5 or a high or low. That's a really, I would call that that is a simplistic way of looking at it. And oftentimes it works. You know, a vast majority of the times you're not looking at a building of this size. You're looking at we look at a house, a pitched roof, maybe a duplex, maybe a triplex. Those are circumstances that really can be addressed from that. Rare is it that you get a building of this size, of this magnitude, that actually has multiple segments. You know, and in our world also, we get in a difficult position where in the housing world, we can only apply clear and objective standards. So this level of detail and analysis of which, you know, we're starting to talk about, how did you come up with this? The expanded findings, that actually doesn't fly in the residential world. I can't get to that level of detail. And you'll see in our world, we also talk about the reason why this code has some issue. It's not the first time you've heard that. This is on display.
Can I ask a question about the segmentation? I mean, is it just completely arbitrary on how these are segmented just to fit their needs? Or is there actual engineering? Are these separate buildings that are being engineered and built separately?
It can't be completely arbitrary. If you look at the drawings will show different roof heights.
But it's actually one building.
It is one building, and we have not interpreted it that a segmented building means multiple buildings, that they must be multiple in different buildings in some way. So that's how we interpreted it as staff.
Yeah, I think if I think of this as being 4 different, lots being developed, this would probably be, this would make sense. If you were to divide this into 4 lots, this is probably how you would expect for them to be developed, not the one furthest uphill to be really short. That's it would be a natural way to develop the lots.
Was there still a question that needs answering?
I guess to make it clear, as a yes or no question, do you feel like the standards that we're using to fill in the gaps of our code, is that something that was born of the applicant or something that was born of our own planning department? And
Do we feel like this is the appropriate way to measure height for this particular lot? Because I know this lot breaks the code.
Yeah, I think it's something that they raised and we responded to as an interpretation. And that's really a very normal arrangement. Like, they raised the question of ambiguity. We are the officials of this, and those really empowered to interpret it, both staff and planning commission. You are in a position to interpret the code and say, this is what's been raised. Is this plausible? Do we buy it? That's actually, I've given you my recommendation on it.
Right.
That is what you're being asked to do right here.
Yeah.
And I guess for the commission, I feel like in terms of compatibility, and when you look at the view of State Street and you see the different heights of the different buildings, to me, it seems like it's pretty compatible. It's not atrociously tall in comparison. It seems like it's just part of the scope, and having that much pavement and not using 100% of the lot makes it feel like and the bricks and whatnot all seems pretty compatible with the look of the street, I think.
I'm in agreement with that. Personally, I think that given the,
People on Sherman might disagree with that.
well, they are not on the planning commission. And it is a subjective, subjective topic.
And that's why I raised the question, is this the appropriate way to measure the height? And like, if they were off of State Street, no matter what, we're just basing it off of the lowest point in the lot. And so, is the building that we have now, would that be compliant in today's code?
I'm sorry, the building that we have, meaning
The existing construction.
Newspaper building.
oh,
The new building.
compliant by way of height?
Yeah,
Yes.
all throughout.
Yeah, it's also maybe a story and 1/2. So if your underlying code says 45 feet, that building is is not a two-story building minus maybe a basement. So
I mean, if we want to get to compatibility, do you want to shift to that as a topic?
I feel like height.
I mean, I mean, I'd like to address, I,
Again, Ezra Hammer for the record. With regards to measuring height, just because there's been conversation of building lot. So the way that you measure it is from the building or building segment. So to the point that was raised, if it was built in multiple lots, each building on each lot would be analyzed on its own. Additionally, if we were to build multiple buildings on the same lot, you would also measure each building. So in a world where Hood River made a different interpretation, let's say Hood River made an interpretation that said building segments, that's not a thing, terrace is not a thing. We could build 5 buildings and each one would be measured exactly the same way that I showed you, and each one would comply individually. So understanding that the only difference there is whether there's a false wall between 2 structurally different buildings with different HVAC systems, that would be immaterially different from the outside is how that would be analyzed. Thank you.
yeah, I mean, I just wanted to weigh in that I do believe that the methodology for calculating height in this step terrace building is reasonable, and I can't come up with a more reasonable kind of way of measuring it. So it seems reasonable and rational. That doesn't mean that I believe it's compatible in bulk and scale. So I just want to be clear on that. So height is a different criteria than compatibility. And I do still want to talk about compatibility outside of height.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh.
Is everybody okay with the height discussion as of now? You guys want to move to compatibility?
Fine with.
Yeah, it sounds like are we do have somewhat of a consensus that the height, the way that it is calculated is acceptable for this project? Is that what yeah, generally, okay.
Yes.
Okay, then yeah, compatibility, right? So, as I said, I don't think it's a clear, standard of what we're choosing from, and everyone in every community is gonna have a different feeling about what that means because it is not very specifically laid out. There are a few things that are involved in compatibility, like that are in the code that we can consider, like the overall, size, square footage of the building, the height of the building, which we've already addressed. There's a provision for terracing or a requirement that anytime you have an extraordinarily big building like that, where I think it was, and don't quote me, but I think it was, if any one of the singular walls is longer than 100 feet, it has to be stepped in some way, design-wise, or in this case, physically, so that it is not just one big giant brick of a building that takes up the whole block. And in my personal opinion of how this is interpreted, I think that they have checked off all those non-subjective standards under compatibility, and then everything else, I mean, I think when it comes to, the materials that they use on the outside of the building and, whether or not, I don't know, those are just, everyone's gonna have a different opinion on those. And I think living in this town for as long as I have and looking at the materials that were provided to us with the images of other buildings in the surrounding area, I can't come up with a reasonable argument that what I see is incompatible. That doesn't mean I haven't heard everyone else's comments on the issue, but I don't find any of them to be so compelling that they override, the things that have been met.
So its compatibility is just visual? Or is it how it feels in the neighborhood, how close it is to residential? I mean, there's a million.
Exactly. It's
You're just addressing basically the look of the building.
yeah.
The
Yeah, the size and the look of the building. I mean, and again, we've been provided with other visual examples of similar looking buildings.
Well, many of them are several blocks away at best.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to address what we're considering the surrounding area for compatibility purposes. I do I do agree that with, looking at the notice area, 250 feet of the proposed development as being a reasonable surrounding area. I don't think picking a building across town is really a legitimate methodology, from my perspective. That was kind of borne out in the findings from the Planning Commission in 2008 on the other hotel down in Cascade. I was able to find that Planning Commission's determination, and they essentially said we're going to use 250 feet, which is the notice area. If you look within just, I did Google Street View of every single property within 250 feet of this development, screenshotted them and looked at them very, methodically. It is grossly incompatible from my perspective in terms of scale and bulk. I think it may be, and if you look at that 317 Sherman, which is that large condo development that the applicant you mentioned was built 20 years ago, it's kind of reasonably compatible with that, but that whole, C2 zone is the office residential back there is not going to be that for some period of time. I mean, it may become that in 30 years, but we don't know. And so we have to look at the current state, I think, of compatibility. And it doesn't meet the threshold from my perspective.
Well, compatibility, can you take into consideration the fact that there's a library and a preschool and a kids climbing gym and all that within the immediate area? Is that considered, is that under the umbrella of compatibility as well? I mean,
I don't know. Is it?
does anybody know?
Question, is it the immediate area, like Matt's saying, 250 feet notice area, or is it all of downtown?
So I think, so let's just read it. If we can, is it okay if we read
Go.
code?
Yeah, go for it.
Is that in the record? Okay. So compatibility, so 17.16.040H. Am I in the right spot? Anyone want to correct me on that? Believe compatibility is defined as the height, bulk, and scale of buildings shall be compatible with the site and buildings in the surrounding area. And the use of materials should promote harmony with surrounding structures and sites.
And again,
And design is separate.
yes,
Yeah.
but we have no specific definition of surrounding area. For me, I think it makes sense to include the entire commercially zoned downtown area. Like, I understand it is on the edge of that, but it is still part of that surrounding, with the absence of any other guidance.
I think we need to get
choose.
consistent over time.
Yeah,
And a planning commission in 2008 determined that it was 250 feet. That's on the record. That precedent that was set.
I don't think that they set precedent, that's not how these work, right? Like, just because they decided to do it back then, doesn't mean that that's now what we use.
Correct. I mean, we could decide, something different. We could
Yeah.
decide we have a different concept of surrounding area, but
Well, my idea of the surrounding area is the immediate, what you can see from the building. I mean, there's there's housing in back, there's a residential area directly south. And like I said, there's a library. And I'm looking at safety issues too.
Yeah.
And compatibility, but maybe we just stick with compatibility. So is that under the umbrella again of compatibility? If there's really nothing in the area that's of that scale at least, and
I don't know that compatibility is that you have to have something similar,
When you
like,
say scale,
exactly.
you mean the length of the building or the height of the building?
all the size, just the overall size of it.
yes, scale can be square footage, can be size.
Yeah,
Scale can
and
be size, and I mean, the FAR
to me,
analysis.
I just feel like I look at the county building and it's, pretty blocky, just brick. And it'll eventually be similar in height in terms of just taking a view of it. So I think in that case, it's compatible in height. I think that the distance or the length of the building, because it's terrace, will feel shorter. And if you're walking down the block, and compared to the church, won't be terribly taller.
If you're comparing from the street, as you're walking up the street, obviously if you take one point and then you take that point, it's gonna be taller from sea level, I suppose, but like from the sidewalk, it'll be about, you're walking downhill.
It'd be the second largest building in town, apparently.
Well, what if it was an apartment building? What is
Yeah,
is your
like-
subjective
If it was what?
compatibility change on what the particular use is or what the actual building looks like? I feel like I've heard a lot of, we wish this was something else.
If it was, if it was a grocery store, I would think it would be worse, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I
More
agree.
dangerous. I wouldn't,
I agree. I think the traffic would be worse too.
yeah.
yeah,
like
that's
I
what,
said,
that's what I
that
mean.
Alone, right?
Traffic alone, yeah. So I'm not in favor of that by any
Well, we should-
stretch. But
We should stick on compatibility. or-
Yeah.
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 So.
And I
so
think-
I think everybody has their
is
idea
it
of
possible to
compatibility.
bring up parts of the evidence? Do we have a way of doing that? That's in record. There's a particular image, the one with Mount Hood in the background, that I think would be useful. I actually zoomed in on that to the 250-foot area.
is it something from the rebuttal?
Yes, from the December 8th letter, line 29, Exhibit D,
He had it up here.
the compatibility.
We saw it. We
Like,
saw it today.
it's
Yeah.
like-
Yeah, we saw it today.
It's
I think if you really zoom in on that, which I've done and cropped it to the 250-foot notice area, which I'm calling the surrounding area, I think you can really see the bulk and scale of this development and its incompatibility. I mean, I don't know how one can't see it. I think it'd be useful, because I know this is in part subjective, to kind of visually see how this, sits in context. I've got it on my screen, but I can't share a screen.
I know which one you're talking about. What page it is.
Yeah, it's the compatibility report. Let me look. It is page 585. And it might be useful to also have the notice area on the map, which is maybe in the application. But I mean, people I think know where that gets you, the courthouse to the admin building, the Sherman properties. And
This one here, yeah.
Keep going.
okay,
Yeah.
that's all I've got.
Sorry, what was, you said that it didn't feel compatible in this particular picture?
I think it clearly shows the bulk and scale being not harmonious with the surrounding buildings and development. But I definitely am interested in other people's opinions on that. On the commission.
Well, one question I have is, are these renderings accurate? Because they've lowered the height supposedly, and it's unclear whether we're using up-to-date renderings.
I would assume that those that were provided in the rebuttal response would be up to date.
Yes. That's. Yeah, from
Yes,
from
they
the
are.
original compatibility exhibit,
From the December 8th.
from December 8th, those have been updated.
Yeah.
I think I've said my piece on compatibility. I don't know, if anyone else have
I
any
can
comments?
just say one more thing, that a lot of the pictures I looked at, and I look at them really carefully. A lot of them are at weird angles. They seem like they're a little distorted and funny. I mean, some of them feel out of scale in the comparisons. From their structure to some of the other buildings in the area, even the neighboring buildings.
Yeah, where the pictures
Just doesn't look.
it's just off of the Google Maps, yeah.
Just doesn't look, they don't
So
look.
it's gonna be a fisheye lens.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that could be,
Yeah, I think we got a lot of angles, but yeah, I feel like
yeah.
So one question that did come up in the public comment was around I'm always getting my C1 and C2 mixed up. This is embarrassing. C1, someone referring to C1 as a residential zone, which brought me into this sort of existential crisis of, am I seeing C and just seeing commercial and seeing R and seeing residential, which would make sense. I'm not sure if that's ever defined, but the actual zone is called residential / office. And I couldn't find any definition of C as a C dash number or R dash number. So it did get me thinking that if we do interpret C1 as as a residential zone, then the setbacks should be greater on Sherman. And it shouldn't be up to the lot line, I believe. Which may help with compatibility, is the reason I say that. And may help with some of the issues that people have along Sherman with it being kind of tunneling Sherman and not being compatible with the developments across the street. Which, again, it's clearly not compatible with the developments across the street on Sherman, from my perspective, on a bulk scale.
Justin, I assume you have a comment on what C zoning means versus R zoning?
Yeah, see, it's lived both ways, actually, in our, it's named office residential, so, you know, whether it's misnomer or not, that is the official name. It does have commercial uses in it. It is, by operations and licensure, it does not follow a lot of the residential standards for licensing, especially in the STR world, so it lives a little of both. Across the street has not been typically considered adjacent, so meaning abutting, sharing property lines, as compared to having two properties and instilling a setback because it's adjacent to residential. Usually that's property to property, not separated by a street.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can I go back to your page number?
Yeah, 585, I think I said.
Well, your point is that that's the best side that shows the bulk of it better than any of the other pictures they have.
I think I think it's one of several images that is useful for determining if it's compatible based on bulk and scale. We could go to other topics if we want while we're waiting.
Please go forth. Discuss other topics. Parking, let's do that. That's the last one on my list.
Well,
Self-identified
I'll do that
topic.
real quick, because I was accused of being biased about the parking and the in-lieu fees. But I did make that comment. It was true, but I also was sitting here when the decision got made. And I thought that they shouldn't have been lowered, the rate, because there are so many, because of what's happening now. I mean, even with the light well, but it does stifle development downtown. But there are a lot of people that could have developed apartments downtown above all the stores and buildings, and they could have done the light well years ago if they had dropped that fee, before they did.
I just go back to one of Mike Connor's comments about, is that discretionary or not, as far as the in-lieu fees? Because he seems to say that he has a disagreement with staff on that point.
Mike,
Whether
We're on the parking now. I mean,
parking, and whether
I was thinking it's disagreement.
Excuse me?
So as far as staff's concerned, and again, back to your December 8th, the in-lieu parking fee has been in place since 2006. It is not a matter that we have used discretionarily, meaning allowing people to use it or not use it based upon our analysis of theirs. It has simply been used to satisfy the code. So I think Mike in his argument mentions, if that is the case, these folks could actually buy out all their parking, and therefore that has issue. Well, in fact, people do buy out their parking, and then, and as mentioned before, other developments, 100%. I mean, vast majority of downtown has no parking. We do not evaluate in lieu being eligible or ineligible on a case-by-case basis. We evaluate it as eligible if it's within the central business district as it's located, it is eligible, and what percentage then becomes based upon that. in my administrative decisions, you'll see findings basically saying satisfies parking or not by providing parking, providing fee in lieu, or a combination thereof. I have yet to say this applicant does not have access to this way of providing parking downtown. This applicant does. We do not discriminate between those. So there's equal eligibility across the board.
And I agree with Commissioner Kitts that I'm really disappointed that the in lieu fee is as low as it is, but such is the way of life right now, and we can't go into a hypothetical situation.
no,
That's the- And I actually think that they're providing a decent amount of parking. I'm honestly a little surprised that we're getting that many, but
Who's providing?
the applicant.
Oh, okay. Well, I wanted to go on record as not being against the in lieu parking situation. I mean, I was around when they lowered it, but it stifled development by having it.
Oh, yeah, I see
That's
what
what I'm saying. So they could have done, I wish they'd have done it, years and years, before they did it, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of that, but it's kind of, I can see it getting to the point where it's going to really have an impact on everyone else trying to park in this town. So I don't know where to go with it, honestly.
Do we have any specific comments about the parking for this project?
No, I think it's compliant with.
Well, that's
Right.
it. Those are the questions. Those are comment.
Connected questions, just, I know that they've written to the, is it the URB about having a partnership with them to build more parking. That seems like that should be sorted out before any approval would happen, because I doubt they're gonna want to disturb their parking once they've already built their hotel. They're not gonna wanna go back and build a parking.
I'm
I
pretty
think
sure that's not possible.
That's not a
Yeah,
condition.
it's not.
We'd have to do-
Conditional by us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they could still do
It
that
just seems
later.
unlikely to me.
Right, yeah, no.
Again, Ezra Hammer here on behalf of the applicant, just responding to the last comment, Commissioner. So as you noted, we've reached out to the Urban Renewal Agency several times. We've noted the fact that we are leaving about 40% of the property undeveloped. You'll notice that we're not building out the entire site. And we've highlighted the fact that our property is currently used as a public parking lot by many people in the community, and that we're happy to explore opportunities for a public-private partnership there. I don't know when the city might be interested in having that conversation. I certainly can't speak on behalf of the city. I can say that if they are interested in exploring it, there is ample time, and we would be happy to have that conversation with them even as the project is getting built or afterwards. There's no kind of time limit on that piece. It's an open-ended conversation, and we welcome that opportunity.
And related to that, Dustin, are they required to have a variance for the access from from Sherman? Since that's sorry to bring Mike Connors up again, but
No.
that's another argument he had made that they would need a.
Yeah, from the existing layout, there's two existing curb cuts. This actually goes back to 1720, which basically evaluates location. Typically, a site that has no access points would be pushed to get access off the lower classification street. In this instance, that would be Sherman. However, there's two existing access points on site, both of them. Well, one of them is extremely non-conforming. This one is non-conforming. There's provisions within the code that talks about those allowing to remain. In this, there's a condition of approval within this application that the applicant eliminate one of those access points. That's the farther westernmost. That's at the current located at State and 6th. This would not trigger a variance. And per the code, it's evaluated as existing non-conforming access points to be evaluated by the city's engineer. So no variance needed, no zoning variance in that.
Okay. Do we have any other topics that we want to cover?
Dustin, are you able to get that?
Nope, was not.
Okay.
And I was unable to be
585.
They have it in their rebuttal.
Oh, yeah, in the PowerPoint too.
Yeah.
This was,
I don't know if you can zoom in.
it's actually page 585 is up there, but I have not been able to be promoted as a panelist,
Okay.
allowed to share. So we found the packet, we have the page up, but
Okay.
it's sharing it to the production team is knows how to do it, but cannot get me the credentials.
I guess I just, back to compatibility, I do wanna, just the FAR kind of analysis that was provided by the applicant on December 15th, page 680 of the combined record excluding applicant materials packet. I mean, again, that included buildings that I believe to be well outside the surrounding area. It also, I think the analysis was a bit flawed by the fact that, I mean, the applicant just mentioned it, that 40% of this site, is that correct, is not actually being developed? Approximately, which is considerable, and many of these, which would greatly impact your FAR analysis. And you know, many of these comparables occupy 100% of the lot area. So I think that really skews this analysis quite a bit, both of those situations. Picking buildings from across town or across downtown, I should say, to be clear, and then also ones that take the entire lot area. So I think that it's a way of justifying kind of the bulk and scale, but I think it doesn't justify the bulk and scale adequately. You know?
Any further comments, or should we perhaps move forward with the motion?
What we got, but habitability, what are the things we saw?
Well, I personally made a list of important points, which was building height, parking, traffic, scale, and compatibility, and those are the 4 main issues for me with this project.
And we kind of beat traffic into the ground, I think.
Yeah,
So
parking we've covered, height we covered, compatibility seems to be,
would safety issues be part of traffic?
I would think so. Okay. We could entertain a motion to recommend approval of file number 2025-15 application with conditions of approval as listed in the initial and revised staff reports. Oh, there were some edits to the staff report that were included in the applicant's response, some little typographical calculation and edits.
Yeah, any of those, we will bring back to you and make sure, again, any decision you do must be reduced to writing, given some of the gravity and size. I will work the markups and technical, return that to you to make sure your decision, whatever it is, has to be reduced to writing and you get an opportunity to review it.
Okay.
That's just procedural, whatever our decision is, it can then just be appealed to the city council, is that the next step?
Yeah, so you are, for a site plan approval, you are the final deciding body unless appealed. Your decision can be appealed, the appellate body is city council for this. So regardless of decision, there's appeal opportunity. That happens typically after you are reduced to writing. We provide notice to everyone who participated in the hearing. All those parties of record are eligible for that, to appeal.
So we can still entertain another motion now to approve as listed in the staff report and presented with the conditions of approval in staff report. So let's
Yeah, I'll go ahead and motion to approve the file with the conditions as listed in the staff report.
Okay, do we have a second for this motion?
We're voting up or down on the project right now.
Well, we need a second.
We need a second for the motion.
I mean, I will second that.
Okay, and then we can go down the line and vote yes
You have
or
any
no.
discussion or,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I believe the applicant has done a lot to attempt to meet the compatibility standard. I see it in the stepping back. I see it in the approach to state. I just believe with the bulk and the scale of that structure, it's not possible to meet with that or with that many rooms. I see the effort. And so I've struggled a lot with this topic and have hyperanalyzed it over the course of seemingly many months. So I just want to say I put a lot of thought into this, and it's with great care that I've come to this moment. And
Thank you. I agree that I think that I really appreciate every single person's participation in this and their opinions on everything. And for me, I feel like there's a pretty clear set of standards for me for judging this project, and I feel like they've been met.
Okay. This is very hard for me too, because I'm new to the council. I studied it for the last month. I've read thousands of pages from the planning commission handbook to everything these guys have done. I think it's a very nice project. I just think it's in the wrong spot. I think it's not compatible with almost anything. I think it's a dangerous precedent to have that much traffic added to the already failing intersections. I've got the three closest businesses to that project, which is really hard for me. I'm a block away. I have 3 retail businesses, which would probably benefit, but the health of the town means more to me than that. So I'm going to have to say no on this, just from compatibility standards. Sorry.
Okay, we'll take an official vote here in a minute. I have to all make a speech, but if you have anything else to add, please
was
feel
it.
free, and then we'll vote.
I got it done.
Okay, well then let's take a vote on the motion.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Chair votes yes. So we have a majority.
3-2.
So your motion failed.
Yes, our motion failed.
Okay.
If I may, I'm gonna jump in here. This is gonna get fun procedurally tonight. Given what just happened, I need to highlight ORS 197522, which says when a deciding body appears to be prepared to deny an application, they have to grant the applicant the opportunity to propose conditions of approval that would satisfy the deciding body. I'm making that request now. I'm requesting that you give us 5 minutes to sidebar and come back to you with those recommended conditions.
This is uncharted territory for me as chair, so I don't know if this is something we take a vote on or.
Yeah, I'd like to hear.
Wait,
Mike Connor.
Connors want to weigh in on this.
Oh, okay.
Well, is it, sorry,
Is that
Dan, is that?
why?
It's a procedural
Okay.
point he's raising, and Mike Connors may have a procedural objection to
Okay.
it, so
Thank
This-
you.
let's hear what he says.
Okay.
So again, Commissioners, for the record, Mike Connors here on behalf of Mr. Ryerson. Appreciate you giving me an opportunity to respond to the applicant's procedural point. That's why I'm raising my hand and asking for it, because their testimony is done and they're raising a procedural point. There's absolutely no requirement that you allow them at this point in the process, after the record's been closed and you're deliberating, to be able to come up with conditions to address your issue. I'd also note that a condition that addresses, for example, the compatibility issue of being incompatible with the site, what kind of condition could they offer today that wouldn't amount to a major modification of the project? Planning Commission's given them more than they're entitled to in terms of being able to address their project, propose conditions of approval. You should decide it, and if they disagree with your decision, they can raise whatever issues they need to raise before the City Council on appeal. So that concludes my comments, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you on this procedural point.
Thank you, Mr. Connor.
I've never seen this statutory provision used this way. I mean, it's been in state law for decades. So I would say it's kind of up to you. I'm struggling to think like maybe a different color of the building would do the trick. So I'm hard pressed to see how it would help, but it's kind of your call. If you want to entertain the 5-minute sidebar and hear what suggested conditions they have or not.
Do we have to vote? Do we have to make a motion?
I would do a vote on the procedural point, because the vote on the main motion is now concluded.
Yeah.
You've got a procedural point, address it with a vote of the commission.
I respond to Mr. Connor's objection. Chair, I will highlight for the commission that there was a case in 2024 in Oregon City where just this very issue was raised. And in the subsequent litigation that occurred, it was found that the city erred by not allowing the applicant to provide an opportunity to propose revised conditions pursuant to 522.
So we might get sued. Is that the deal?
Where I say I'm not a lawyer, so,
To me, these guys have really, I feel I'm a developer. I've built 500 houses in this town. I've been on the other side of this thing many, many times. I feel bad for the applicants. I know this is from what they've gone through, I can't even imagine. I mean, it's much bigger scale than anything I've ever done. I would be inclined to let them have their 5 minutes. I don't think it's gonna make a difference. I shouldn't probably say that, but I can't imagine the difference it would make. But that, I would say, well, why not? But it's not,
Yeah, I think the challenge is that if it results in essentially a different proposal, then no one has had a chance to comment on, it's gonna be challenging. So yeah, I think go for it, but I think it's gonna be challenging.
that's a good word for it.
Well, I'm kind of curious what might come of it, but I don't know if it's a good idea. Sure.
When it comes to procedural errors, it never pays to scrimp on process. So this is one way to kind of avoid that problem. Just see what they have to say,
that's
5
kind of
minutes.
what I was leaning towards as well, is that more information is probably better than not, so. Do we have any objections to them?
No, no objection.
Okay, are we all in favor or agree to let them present? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we are back on the record after a little break here. It is 8:07. We are going to move forward with the last bit of testimony we have this evening.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for bearing with us. I understand this is unique. We have been doing our best to actively listen as you deliberate. There are certain features of the site that we cannot change. How big the property is, that's something beyond our control. How big the building is, kind of in relationship to the property. We've done our best to keep it from covering the entire site. We were doing that not as a way to provide false information around floor area ratio, but because we felt it was more compatible. And so that has us leaving a lot more of the property vacant than presumably others would in this context. So those things feel a bit challenging. We did hear, we think, some very eloquent testimony around the compatibility issue as it relates to the southern low-scale residential properties. And a question was raised around setbacks in the context of adjacency between these various zones. So your code has requirements where zones are touching, the properties are touching, you have additional setbacks. And as staff mentioned, that wasn't applicable in our projects because we're across the street, we're not touching. We would propose to this commission to set back the property 10 feet, providing a landscape buffer off of Sherman in a way that would mimic the setback requirements if the properties were in fact adjacent. So setting the entirety of the building 10 feet back from Sherman at street level, and we would provide a landscape catwalk buffering adjacent to Sherman. So the touch and feel of Sherman would be sidewalk, landscape buffer. We do not believe that this is the type of material change that would require reconsideration. We're, if anything, reducing the impacts of the project. We're setting it back farther. We're taking away that friction point between the various zones separated by the road. But we would request that you consider that as a condition of approval for this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What now?
You get to think about it. You can impose conditions like this on any development that you want. This doesn't change this doesn't invalidate the notice that went out about this proposal since it wasn't that specific. So you can consider this, deliberate about it, and decide whether you want to. Someone could make a motion that readdresses the fundamental thumbs up, thumbs down decision you've already made.
Thanks, Dan.
Is that
Yeah.
clear enough? Sort of.
I greatly appreciate that consideration. Based on what I've heard from other commissioners, I don't know that it may make much of a difference to our vote, but
It doesn't make a difference. I mean, I appreciate that consideration, but I don't believe it's going to make a difference to my weighing in on compatibility with bulk and scale.
As a builder, I know that is a really big deal to do that. I mean, I can't imagine the trouble it was going to take and what you had to go through to even consider that, let alone agree to do that. But I don't believe it's going to affect the compatibility in a positive way, except maybe for the people on Sherman. But even then, their views are gone. So I'm of a mind to reject this.
I'm afraid I'm still have compatibility.
okay, thank you. So deliberated, but no need to re-vote, it seems like.
No new motion.
No new motion is proposed. Okay, well, I think that's it for us this evening. Let me get up my agenda. I don't think there's anything else. Dustin, do you have anything else to give us this evening before we close the meeting?
So with the failed motion to approve this, I will have to draft findings of denial. You will need to prepare we'll start a draft on your behalf for findings of fact. I'll need you to do some homework because again, this is a fact finding regardless of up or down. This matter needs to be articulated for city council to evaluate. So we'll do some drafting. I'll start with my staff report initially as developed and then as supplemented as to kind of part of the record as it's based around the code. We'll have to evaluate and try to articulate what you've stated. I need you to then finalize and validate that and issue that that decision as
So when will this come back?
soon as possible.
Okay, we'll have another
I need,
hearing just about the findings of fact.
yes, yeah, I believe that first meeting in February will be my target date. I'm sorry, I don't know what your next regular scheduled meeting is.
First Monday is the 2nd February.
February 2nd.
Okay,
So I have no other information or materials for you to evaluate on February 2nd. This will be the only thing that comes back for you to articulate.
okay, so it'll literally just be a review meeting for us to.
Review a decision.
Yeah, okay,
Ju-
Okay.
Adoption of findings. You've already decided the case.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, all right then, well, with nothing else, this meeting is now officially adjourned at 8:13 PM. Thank you again, everyone. Have a good night.